The night always came too fast for her. Every evening felt like a quiet warning. The sun would go down, and her second life would begin. Her name was Maria. She was a mother of 5 children, and she was alone. Not alone by choice, but alone because life had decided so. Once, she had dreams that looked simple. A small home, a husband, laughter at dinner, rest on weekends. But dreams do not always survive reality. Her husband left without looking back. No explanation that made sense, no money, no goodbye that felt real. Only silence. And 5 small faces asking questions she could not answer. The youngest was barely 2, the oldest not even 12. 5 hearts depending on one tired soul. That night, Maria cried for the first time without sound. She did not want the children to hear fear in her breath. Morning came without mercy. Bills on the table, rent overdue, electricity warning, school notes waiting to be signed. She looked at the mirror, a woman staring back who looked older than her years. But behind the tired eyes lived something strong. Responsibility. She searched for work everywhere. Day jobs paid too little. Daycare cost more than earnings. No family nearby, no one to help. So she chose the hours nobody wanted. Night shift. A cleaning job downtown. Offices, hospitals, warehouses. Work that smelled like chemicals. Work that broke the back. Work that stole sleep. But it paid enough to survive. Her nights belonged to strangers. Her days belonged to children. Every evening she cooked simple meals. Rice, beans, sandwiches. She helped with homework while fighting sleep. She washed clothes while planning tomorrow. She kissed scraped knees and broken hearts. At night, she packed her bag quietly. Uniform folded, shoes worn thin. She kissed each child on the forehead, whispered promises she prayed to keep. I will be back. I will not give up. The door closed softly. The hallway felt long. The streetlights flickered like tired eyes. At work, nobody asked about her pain. They only saw another worker, mop in hand, head down. Her feet ached. Her hands cracked. Her heart missed home. Some nights she cleaned offices where success lived. Big desks, soft chairs, photos of smiling families. She wondered what it felt like to sleep at night, to wake rested, to feel safe. But self-pity had no place in her life. 5 lives depended on her standing. And she stood. Maria learned very quickly that time was no longer hers. Every minute belonged to someone else. Every breath was borrowed. The days began to blur into nights, and the nights melted into mornings. Sleep was no longer rest. It was survival. She slept sitting sometimes, on the edge of the bed, on the couch, in a chair near the kitchen, always alert, always listening. The children learned her rhythm. They learned to be quiet in the mornings. They learned to help each other. They learned responsibility too early. The oldest helped the younger ones get ready. Shoes tied, backpacks zipped, breakfast shared. Maria watched them with pride and pain. Pride because they were strong. Pain because childhood was slipping away from them. School meetings became another battle. Teachers asked questions. Why is he always tired? Why is she late? Why are assignments missing? Maria nodded. She apologized. She promised improvement. But she knew the truth. Some nights were too heavy. Some mornings were impossible. Money was never enough. Rent took most of it. Food took the rest. There was no room for mistakes, no room for sickness, no room for rest. When one child got sick, Maria stayed awake all night, then went to work anyway. Her body learned to move without permission. Her mind learned to push pain aside. At work, she became invisible. Nobody asked her name, nobody asked her story. She cleaned floors that reflected light. She emptied trash filled with other people's leftovers. She wiped desks where dreams were written and erased. Sometimes she imagined her children sitting at those desks one day, wearing clean clothes, holding books without fear. That dream carried her through the hardest nights. One winter night, her car refused to start. Cold air cut through her jacket. Her hands shook. She stood there, looking at the dark road, thinking of the job, thinking of the children asleep at home. She walked, miles in the cold, feet numb, legs burning. She arrived late. Supervisor frowned, wrote her name down. No explanation mattered. That night, she cried behind a locked bathroom door. Not loudly, not freely, just enough to breathe again. At home, the fridge grew emptier. She learned to stretch meals, to cut portions, to say she already ate. The children noticed. They offered bites from their plates. That broke her more than hunger. One evening, the youngest asked a simple question. "Mama, why do you work when it is dark?" Maria paused. She searched for words. She smiled and said, "Because my love does not sleep." That night, she hugged them longer. Loneliness became a quiet companion. No adult conversations, no laughter, no support, just responsibility. Friends slowly disappeared. Invitations stopped. Life moved on without her. But she kept moving forward. There were moments when her body begged her to stop, when her knees shook, when her vision blurred. But stopping was not an option. She learned strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, just one more step. Bills continued to arrive. Red letters, final notices. She negotiated, she begged, she promised. Sometimes she won time, sometimes she did not. Electricity went out once. Candles lit the house. Children laughed at shadows on walls. Maria smiled, even when fear sat heavy in her chest. She learned to turn pain into calm, chaos into routine. Every night before leaving, she lined up shoes, prepared clothes, wrote notes. "I love you. Be good. I will be back." Those notes were her voice when she was gone. At work, she was praised for dedication, never absent, never complaining. They never knew what it cost her. Her hands grew rough, her back curved, her eyes lost sparkle, but her heart stayed fierce. She began to understand something important. Life had taken much from her, but it had not taken her purpose. She was building something, slowly, quietly, a future, even if nobody saw it yet. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about proving something to the world, to her children, to herself, that she could endure. And she did. Time moved forward without asking her permission. Months turned into years, and exhaustion became normal. Maria stopped counting hours of sleep. She measured life and tasks completed, lunches packed, floors cleaned, bills paid. The children grew taller, voices deeper, questions harder. Why do we not have what others have? Why are you always tired? Why is Dad not here? Each question landed heavy, but Maria answered with honesty, wrapped in hope. She told them, "We may not have much, but we have each other." That answer became their anchor. School became more demanding. Projects required supplies. Trips required money. Uniforms required replacements. Maria learned to say no gently, to explain without breaking dreams. Sometimes she stayed up after work, helping with projects, cutting paper, gluing pictures. Her eyes burned, her hands shook, but she stayed present. One night, the oldest child waited for her, sitting on the couch, half asleep. He looked at her and said, "Mama, you should rest." Those words hit deeper than any insult. A child worrying about his mother. She held him and promised to be careful. But care was a luxury she could not afford. Her health began to suffer. Headaches, back pain, dizziness. Doctor's visits cost money she did not have, so she ignored the signs. Pain became background noise. At work, she was asked to cover extra shifts. More hours, more money. She said yes without hesitation. Night after night, holiday after holiday, while others celebrated, she cleaned. On one holiday morning, she returned home as the children opened gifts from a donation center. Used toys, worn clothes. The children smiled anyway. Maria went to the bathroom and cried quietly. Grateful, ashamed, determined. She made a silent promise. One day, I will give you more. School notices praised her children. Good behavior, hard workers. Teachers were surprised. Children from broken homes were expected to fail, but these children did not, because every night their mother fought for them. Neighbors sometimes judged. Whispers, looks, questions. Why so many kids? Why always alone? Maria learned to walk with her head high. Shame had no place in her heart. She had done nothing wrong. One evening, she missed a school event. Work would not let her leave. The disappointment in her child's eyes haunted her. That night at work, she cleaned slower, tears falling into the mop water. She wondered if sacrifice always hurt this much. But quitting would hurt more. The children learned independence. They learned empathy. They learned respect. They saw their mother leave at night and return at dawn. They learned what love looked like. One night, a storm hit the city. Rain heavy, wind loud. Power went out at work. Alarms rang. Maria stayed calm, guided others, finished her job. She was praised later. Leadership found in silence. At home, she found the children huddled together, candles lit, waiting for her. That sight erased her fear. She realized something important. She was not just raising children, she was raising survivors. Her sacrifices were shaping them, teaching strength, teaching discipline. Though she never spoke of her pain, it lived in her posture, in her tired smile. Some nights she imagined giving up, letting someone else decide. But every time she chose to continue, because quitting would mean surrender. And Maria did not surrender. Life was testing her limits, pushing her to edges she did not know existed. But she stood, night after night, still standing, still fighting, still loving. The weight of years began to settle deeper into Maria's bones. What once felt temporary now felt endless. Her body no longer bounced back. Each night shift took something from her. Each morning demanded something she no longer had. Still, she moved. Still, she showed up. One afternoon, she collapsed onto the couch. Not asleep, not awake, just empty. The children watched quietly. They knew better than to disturb her. That silence scared her. She realized they had learned to protect her, just as she had protected them. That night, she went to work anyway. At the warehouse, a supervisor announced changes. Fewer workers, more responsibility, same pay. Maria listened without protest. Protest did not pay rent. The work became heavier. Longer distances, stricter rules, breaks shortened, expectations rose. She pushed through, even when her legs trembled. One night, her vision blurred. The room spun. She held onto a shelf, breathed slowly. Someone asked if she was okay. She nodded. Okay was her default answer. Medical bills were a fear she could not afford. At home, the children grew more aware. They noticed her limp, the way she rubbed her back. The second oldest began cooking simple meals. The youngest learned to pour cereal carefully. Maria watched them grow up too fast, and guilt followed her everywhere. She wished she could be more present, more rested, more whole. But life did not allow wishes. One evening, a letter arrived. School counselor requesting a meeting. Maria felt her chest tighten. She imagined trouble, judgment, blame. At the meeting, she listened quietly, expecting criticism. Instead, the counselor spoke with warmth. Your children are strong, responsible, kind. They credit you. Maria felt tears rise. Unexpected, uncontrolled. For the first time, someone saw her effort. That night, she walked home lighter, still tired, but seen. Work continued to demand more. Her body continued to protest. One winter morning, she woke with sharp pain. Breathing hurt. Movement hurt. She sat on the edge of the bed, considering staying home. Then she looked at the calendar. Rent due. Food low. She stood up. Pain would wait. At work, she moved slower. Every step deliberate. A coworker noticed, offered help. Maria accepted. It felt strange, relying on someone else. That small kindness stayed with her. She realized she had carried everything alone for too long. But survival had taught her that dependence was dangerous. Trust had a cost. The children brought home report cards. All passing. Some excelling. Maria praised them, hugged them, smiled. Inside, she whispered, "Thank you." Her sacrifice was working, even if the price was high. One night, as she left for work, the youngest hugged her tightly. "Promise you will come back?" Maria laughed softly. "Of course." But the fear behind that question stayed with her. She began to think about the future, not just tomorrow, but years ahead. What happens when my body fails? What happens when I cannot work nights? Fear crept in. She pushed it away. Survival had taught her to focus on now. Still, a quiet voice inside her whispered, "This cannot be forever." Something would have to change. And change was closer than she realized. Change arrived quietly. Not as a miracle, not as rescue, but as a moment. Maria did not recognize it at first. It came on a night like any other. Cold air, dim lights, endless floors. She was cleaning a medical office. The walls lined with certificates, names she could not pronounce. She paused longer than usual, reading words about healing, care, education. Something stirred inside her. She remembered a younger version of herself, a girl who once wanted more, a girl who believed effort mattered. Life had buried that girl under responsibility, but she was still there. That night, Maria finished her shift slower, thoughtful, awake in a new way. At home, she could not sleep. Even exhaustion could not quiet her mind. She thought about the future, about aging, about limits. Night work would not last forever. Her body was already warning her. The idea scared her, but fear no longer froze her. Fear motivated her. The next week, she noticed a flyer at work. Free training program. Healthcare support roles, flexible hours. She stared at it for a long time. Training meant time. Time meant less work. Less work meant less money. The risk felt enormous. She walked past it, then came back, then tore off the contact tab. She did not tell anyone. Not yet. Days passed, then weeks. The idea refused to leave her. One evening, she sat with the children, listening to them talk about school, dreams, jobs. She realized she never spoke of her own dreams. That night, she called the number. The voice on the other end was kind, explained the program, classes in the evening, some weekends. Maria felt her heart pound. Evenings were for work. Weekends were for rest that never came. She thanked them and hung up, but something had shifted. At work, her supervisor noticed her distraction, asked questions. Maria said nothing. She did not want hope to disappoint her children, but hope had already entered. The following month, her hours were cut unexpectedly. Budget changes, staff reductions. Panic returned, but so did clarity. This was the sign she had been waiting for. She applied for the program. Paperwork, interviews, assessments. She attended quietly, nervously. When acceptance came, she stared at the letter for a long time, hands shaking. She was scared. She was excited. She was uncertain. She told the children. Their reactions surprised her. They smiled. They hugged her. They said, "We will help." That support filled a space she did not know was empty. The first weeks were brutal. Work, study, motherhood. No room for mistakes. She studied during lunch breaks, reviewed notes on buses, memorized terms while cooking. Sleep became even shorter, but this exhaustion felt different. It had direction. Some nights she wanted to quit, her brain foggy, her body heavy. Then she remembered why she started, not just for herself, but for the children. They watched her study. They watched her struggle. They learned something new. Growth is hard, but worth it. There were setbacks, failed quizzes, missed deadlines. Maria cried alone, then tried again. Instructors noticed her effort, encouraged her. For the first time in years, someone invested in her potential. At work, she reduced shifts. Money tightened. She budgeted harder, cut more. The children adjusted without complaint. Pride replaced fear. Months passed. Maria passed exams, gained confidence. Her posture changed, her eyes brighter. She began to imagine a life with nights at home, with mornings rested. That dream felt dangerous, but real. The program neared completion. A job opportunity followed. Day hours, better pay, benefits. Maria sat in the interview room, hands folded, voice steady. She spoke honestly about struggle, about responsibility, about resilience. They listened. When the offer came, she cried openly, not from relief, but from validation. She accepted. The first night, she did not go to work. She stayed home. She watched her children sleep. For the first time in years, she slept at night. This was not the end, but it was a turning point. Her life had begun to change. The first morning in her new routine felt unreal. Maria woke as sunlight entered the room, not darkness, not alarm clocks set for exhaustion. Her body did not understand it at first. Years of night work had trained her to exist in shadows. She sat on the bed, listening to the house breathe, children still asleep, peaceful. She smiled. The new job was not easy. Learning curves, responsibilities, expectations, but it respected her humanity. She worked during the day, returned home before night, cooked dinner without rushing. The children noticed the change immediately. "You are home!" Those words felt like a gift. Her body began to heal slowly. Back pain eased, headaches softened, sleep became deeper, rest more real. But guilt lingered. She wondered if the years she had lost could ever be recovered. At work, she proved herself quickly, reliable, focused, compassionate. Patients trusted her. Co-workers respected her. She carried her past quietly, letting it shape her kindness. Money stabilized, bills paid on time, groceries felt less stressful. Small victories mattered. The children thrived. Grades improved, smiles returned, dinner conversations replaced hurried instructions, laughter returned to the house. Maria began to feel something unfamiliar. Hope without fear. Yet healing brought reflection. Reflection brought pain. She mourned the woman she had been forced to become, the nights she had missed, the moments she had sacrificed. She sat with those emotions, did not run. Strength had taught her endurance. Now she learned gentleness. One evening, the oldest child thanked her, not with words, but with a quiet hug. That hug said everything. Maria realized something important. Her struggle had not broken her children. It had shaped them. They were compassionate, independent, resilient. They had learned empathy early because they had watched her fight silently. She began to speak more openly about effort, about failure, about dreams. The children listened closely. She was no longer just surviving, she was teaching. At work, an opportunity arose, additional training, growth potential. Maria hesitated, old fear returned, but she remembered who she had become. She accepted. Each step forward strengthened her confidence. She no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstances, she saw herself as a woman who adapted. Community slowly entered her life. Coworkers became friends, support systems formed. She learned she did not have to carry everything alone. Trust came carefully, but it came. The house felt lighter, not because life was easy, but because it was shared. Maria looked at her children one night, all gathered, safe, growing. She felt proud, not just of them, but of herself. She had endured years of darkness and still chose light. The hardest chapter was behind her, but the story was not finished. The future waited, open, bright, and Maria was finally ready to walk into it. Years passed with a steadiness Maria had once thought impossible. Life did not become perfect, but it became manageable. The children grew into teenagers, then young adults, each carrying pieces of her strength. They remembered the nights she left quietly, the mornings she returned tired. Those memories shaped their choices. They studied harder. They respected effort. They valued family. Maria watched them become people she admired. Her career progressed slowly, not through shortcuts, but through consistency. She took additional certifications, learned new skills, built confidence. Colleagues began to seek her advice. Managers noticed her reliability. She never bragged. She never forgot where she came from. Her past stayed with her, not as pain, but as wisdom. The house changed. Posters replaced toys. Schedules replaced bedtime stories. But love remained constant. One by one, the children reached milestones, graduations, first jobs, achievements. Maria attended every ceremony, every event. She sat in crowds, tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from victory. She remembered the nights she cried alone, the doubts, the hunger. Those moments made these victories sweeter. One evening, the family gathered for dinner, all 5 children present. Laughter filled the room. Someone mentioned the past, the night shifts, the sacrifices. Maria tried to dismiss it, but the children insisted. They spoke openly about what they had seen, what they had learned. They thanked her, not loudly, not dramatically, but sincerely. That gratitude settled deep in her chest. She realized something powerful. Her children did not resent her absence. They respected her endurance. The years of sacrifice had not created distance, they had created connection. Maria felt complete in that moment. At work, she was offered a leadership role, training others, mentoring new staff. She accepted with humility. She used her story to inspire quietly, never seeking attention. Her compassion set her apart. She saw people, not positions. Outside work, she volunteered occasionally, helping other single mothers, sharing resources, listening. She never judged. She understood struggle intimately. Her children noticed her giving back. They followed her example. Service became family language. Time softened old wounds. Forgiveness replaced anger. Peace replaced survival. Maria no longer measured life in fear, she measured it in presence. She had built a life from nothing, brick by brick, night by night, and now she stood surrounded by proof. The hardest years were behind her, but their impact would last forever. She had not only raised children, she had raised human beings who understood strength. The ending was approaching, quiet, earned, and it would be hers. Maria woke that morning with the sunlight spilling through the curtains. She no longer woke to exhaustion. She woke to a house alive with laughter. The children were preparing for their own lives now, packing bags for college, starting first jobs, chasing dreams Maria once had silently shelved. She watched them. Her chest swelled with pride. Her heart felt full in a way it had never known. Years of struggle had not been wasted. They had been lessons. Each night shift, each skipped meal, each tear quietly shed had built something permanent. Maria reflected on herself, the woman who once collapsed in silence, who feared failure more than hunger, who lived in shadows while the city slept. That woman still existed, but she had transformed. Strength had become grace. Endurance had become wisdom. Sacrifice had become legacy. Her children approached her one by one, sharing small victories, first paychecks, college acceptances, achievements she had prayed for silently. They thanked her without pretense, not out of obligation, but out of genuine admiration. She felt tears run freely. No shame, no regret. She had done it. She had not only survived, she had triumphed. At work, she now led a small team, guided others through challenges, shared lessons from her journey, showed that persistence and love could overcome any hardship. Outside work, she continued to mentor other single mothers, sharing not just strategies, but belief, faith in themselves. She understood now that her story mattered, that her sacrifices had meaning, that love carried power stronger than fatigue or fear. One quiet evening, she sat in the living room, children around her, smiles and chatter filling the space, and she realized she had arrived at a place she once thought unreachable, not perfect, not without struggle, but whole. The house that once echoed with worry now hummed with hope. The bills still came, the work still demanded effort, but the fear had disappeared. In its place was pride, contentment, the quiet joy of having fought and having won. Maria knew the hardest chapter of her life was over, but the lessons she carried would remain forever, in her children, in herself, in every life she touched. She looked at them. 5 hearts she had nurtured, 5 souls she had guided, and she smiled, because she had done more than survive. She had created a legacy, a life built not on comfort or ease, but on love, resilience, and unwavering determination. Her story was not just about working nights. It was about rising every time, about believing when hope seemed impossible, about never giving up. And in that moment, surrounded by the people she had fought for, Maria felt the peace she had been chasing for decades. She closed her eyes briefly, breathed deeply, and knew she had succeeded. Not in spite of struggle, but because of it. The house was alive, the children were thriving, and Maria, the mother who never slept, had finally found rest. The years that followed were filled with quiet victories. The house was no longer a battlefield. It was a home, a place where love was visible in every corner. Maria continued to work, but the night shifts were gone. Her body healed, her spirit stronger than ever. She watched her children take their first steps into independence, some moving away, some starting careers, some discovering passions she had only dreamed of. Every milestone felt like a personal triumph, not just theirs, but hers as well. She reflected on the nights she had left quietly, the darkness that had once enveloped her life. She remembered the fear, the exhaustion, the feeling of being invisible, and she realized all of it had led to this. Strength is not only in endurance, it is in patience, in love, in guiding others through hardship without giving up. Maria began to mentor more actively, sharing her story openly, helping single mothers navigate the chaos she once knew so well. Her life became a beacon, not through fame, not through money, but through example. She learned that bravery is quiet, invisible, and persistent. The children often said, "Mama, you taught us how to live. Without you, we would not be who we are." Those words pierced her heart, a blend of joy and humility. Maria now understood that the nights of loneliness had a purpose, that the sacrifices were seeds planted, seeds that had grown into something strong and unshakable. Her past no longer haunted her. It informed her, shaped her, empowered her. She looked around the house one evening, sunsets spilling golden light through the windows, books stacked on desks, shoes lined up neatly, laughter echoing softly. Maria smiled, a smile born of decades of effort. Pain transformed into resilience, fear transformed into wisdom. She finally understood the truth she had been searching for all those years. Life is not about how little you sleep or how hard you work. It is about what you build, what you leave behind, and how love carries you through the darkness. Her story would live, not in headlines, not in applause, but in the hearts she had touched and the lives she had shaped. She had fought silently, loved fiercely, and endured without complaint. And in the reflection of her children's eyes, she saw her own victory. Maria had not just raised children, she had raised a legacy, a life proof that even in the darkest nights, one could endure, one could rise, one could win. The morning sunlight streamed into the house. Maria woke without an alarm, without the weight of dread, without the exhaustion that had once defined her existence. She sat on the edge of her bed, looking around. 5 children, all grown, all strong, all ready to step into the world. Her heart swelled with pride and relief. She remembered every sleepless night, every tear, every ache in her body, every whispered promise to keep going, and she realized that each struggle, each sacrifice, had not been in vain. The children entered the room one by one, smiles bright, eyes filled with love. They hugged her, each one holding tightly as if to thank her for every unseen moment. Maria closed her eyes, feeling the weight lift off her shoulders, the burden of survival replaced by the joy of legacy. Her house had transformed from a place of fear and uncertainty to a home full of laughter and light. At work, she had built a career. Not flashy, not famous, but meaningful, helping others navigate life challenges, inspiring them silently with her example. Her life was no longer defined by exhaustion. It was defined by love, resilience, and perseverance. One evening, she sat quietly, reflecting on the years she had endured, the nights she had left for work, the days she had rushed through, the meals skipped, the tears swallowed. She understood now that those years had built something permanent, strength, not only in herself, but in the people she had raised. Her children were independent, compassionate, responsible, and deeply grateful. They had learned courage not from words, but from watching her rise every day, despite fear, despite fatigue, despite pain. Maria felt tears slide down her cheeks, not from sorrow, but from the quiet triumph of a life well fought. The house was alive with voices, stories, plans, dreams. She listened, smiled, and finally felt complete. Maria had endured what many could not imagine. She had loved more deeply than she thought possible. She had sacrificed without complaint. She had taught without lectures, and she had won. The night shifts were gone, but the lessons remained. The love remained. The legacy remained. She looked at the sunset, golden light spilling across the walls, and she whispered softly, "I made it." Her children gathered around her, 5 hearts shaped by her courage, 5 lives made stronger by her unwavering love. Maria had not only survived, she had thrived. And in thriving, she had built a story that would live forever, a story of strength, a story of resilience, a story of a mother who never gave up. The darkest nights of her life had created the brightest days, and Maria, the woman who once walked through shadows, had finally stepped into the light. Her journey was complete, her victory earned, her legacy secured. The end of struggle, the beginning of peace.